Hey guys, this is Oakley, and we're going to be zooming in on two of the battles that I overlooked in my campaign impressions. So the first one is going to be this battle here, which is going to be where, if you recall, I was trying to fortify all the avenues into the Balkans with my armies. My armies are kind of depleted. So this one here in particular, set up on defensive mode, and two Hunnic forces are now going to try and force the straits. So here I go. I'm going to be defending this fort. Now, I had to say a couple things about the fort battle. I like forts now. Fort battles are much better than they were in Rome 2. Fort battles in Rome 2, the fort was tiny. It was crammed. You couldn't do anything inside the fort. You couldn't deploy. The watchtowers were kind of weird positions, sometimes outside of the fort and stuff like that. I mean, look at the size of the fort here. Much more open feeling. And you'll see me shuffling my forces around. Now, I don't think that forts are different for the different factions. I think all the factions have the same type of forts. But if they make it a fort that's more usable, like this one, I'm kind of happy with that fact. I was hoping they were going to do a little bit more with the forts to have more defensive emplacements, or maybe the palisade walls would have a little bit of a rampart built up against them, and I don't know, stuff like that. But the forts are good enough for me. And one of the things I wanted to point out is in the preview build that I played of the forts, I was very disappointed by the forts. I mean, it looked cool at first, but it turned out that, you know how when your units run over like a wall or something, like a low wall, it just crumbles? Somehow they had that physics applied to fort walls, so I was like defending the key passes of my fort this is in the preview build, and the enemy would just run right over my walls, and so I was like, what the hell is this shit? But now actually I was pleasantly surprised to see that the walls do hold up in this case, and that's obviously going to be crucial when I'm going to be facing against the Huns. Now, again, talking a little bit about the campaign itself. The campaign, you have to be very, very careful about the deployment of your forces, and that's why I really, really like the Attila Total War campaign, because it makes you care so much more about your armies and troops. Every individual army is very, very important to you, and being sure to deploy them in the most defensible positions, just like I'm doing here, is crucial. So in this case, I've deployed some of the deployables to cover my rear, because there's a second Hunnic force coming that way. And then my front lines are going to be guarded by pikemen on the right, and then some reserve infantry, and then basically the meat of the Sagittarii are going to be in the rear, and they're going to be used to punch into the opponents. Now, I'm not quite sure what to comment on the AI's behavior in this fort. I mean, it seems to be exploiting the multiple gaps in the walls relatively fairly enough, but it's still kind of running straight into my men. But I'm not quite sure what else I would expect the AI to do. I mean, all it has is Hunnic forces, cavalry, mounted, and so I'm not quite sure what I expect out of the AI. It behaved without too many quirks, and that's kind of what I've heard people saying who've played a lot of the campaign, is that the AI is definitely performing much better. It does relatively sensible things. It seems to be able to capture settlements and do stuff like that pretty well. But that occasionally you'll run into glitches, but nothing as game breaking as before. And here you can see some of the deployables that I put right there to prevent cavalry running through. So definitely very important. The AI didn't seem to mind it; it just ran right through it. So maybe you can dock that out, chalk that up as a downside of the AI. But for the most part, I felt the AI was dealing with pretty confidently. And my defenses are holding up pretty well. The fort itself, you can see how I'm actually fighting within the confines of the fort. There's a lot of ways into the fort, so that kind of neutralizes it, and it makes it so that a faction like the Huns can actually penetrate into your fort pretty easily. However, with the deployables you have, you can form them to a little interior position right here, funnel the Huns down certain areas, use their deployables to cut down on them. So I think they've found a pretty good balance in terms of making the fort open enough but still yet defensible enough. And my force that was pretty small was able to hold back the Huns, whereas otherwise, if I were fighting on an open plain, I would be completely surrounded and obliterated. The support of the towers all firing at the Huns. The deployables is definitely helping me stay alive, and this is going to be very important for me from the campaign perspective. And there you go, there's the victory. So, again, very happy with the way forts played out. I do think they can make a couple more improvements, but I'm really enjoying the level of detail they have on the battlefield maps. This is something that you see on all of the maps, and it shows in the forts themselves. Inside the fort, you see a lot of the tents. Well, that was in Rome too, but it's been ramped up a little bit in the amount of detail. So yeah, this is going to be it for my coverage of the fort battle as a sort of a zoom into that campaign. So I'll go ahead and link that to the campaign If you haven't seen it already, check that out. It gives my impressions of the first several terms of the Eastern Roman Empire, and it's very, very fun. So this is the end of the battle, and you can see my force rather small compared to the... Oh, actually, never mind. There was 984 Huns in one army, but then they had a second army, so they did outnumber me, and this allowed me to hold the pass and beat them back. So another cool thing that you can do is actually choose to take the captured enemy units and use them to replenish your own forces. Now the next battle that's going to take place is a little bit more to the west of us, so I'm going to end this video here and we'll pick up on that next one. See you guys.